Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Banfield. I'm Jesse Weber in tonight for Ashleigh. It is a jam-packed Monday night, beginning with a huge turnaround in a double murder case from 1994. When I mention that, I think you know what I'm talking about. Ron Goldman, Nicole Brown Simpson. They were the victims. Nicole's ex-husband, O.J., was the suspect, actually stood trial twice. We always talk about the criminal court, the criminal case where he won, but the civil court, the civil case, he lost there. He was ordered to pay the victims' families more than $30 million, but you and I both know he never did. But now, more than a year after O.J.'s death, his estate has agreed to write Ron Goldman's father a very big check. But even now, after all of this time, there is a very big catch. We're going to dig into that in just a minute. And then more fallout from this just unbelievably lenient sentence, if you can even call it that, that was given, to get this, an admitted teen rapist in Oklahoma. Okay, now we've got some newly uncovered texts from Jesse Mack Butler begging one of his victims, seemingly begging one of his victims not to turn him in. Spoiler alert, both of Butler's victims told authorities every horrible detail, but that is not all, because we are also hearing from members of Butler's own family condemning his brutality, calling for real punishment in this case. We have a digital journalist who has been following the story for months. He's also going to join me live later on. Inside the takedown of the Golden State Killer, we know that he terrorized millions for more than a decade. He stayed one step ahead of police, maybe several steps for decades after that. But finally, Joseph DeAngelo was caught by a cutting-edge DNA technology. And it was a distinguishing characteristic, I think that's probably a fair way to say it, that he never exactly bragged about. I think you could see what I'm talking about between the lines. We're going to talk about that because the prosecutor who put DeAngelo away is my guest. We're going to have him on minutes from now. But first, back to O.J. There is a reason that O.J. Simpson spent the last third of his life as far under the radar as he could. Yes, he was a pariah to millions, but he was also a hero to millions. So why waste his golden years hiding out on golf courses and living on a football pension and Social Security? It's pretty simple. He didn't want to pay Fred Goldman. If you were around and watching news in 1997, you know that 3 years after O.J.'s shocking acquittal in the murders of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman, O.J. lost a wrongful death lawsuit that was filed by the victims' families. He was ordered to pay them $33.5 million. And ducking that judgment, that became his mission for the rest of his days, which ended in April of last year at 76. Now, in between that judgment and O.J.'s final judgment, he did spend time in prison. You may recall for trying to steal back some of his own sports memorabilia in 2007, but when he got out, he lay low. And the executor of his estate took the same hard line as the deceased when it came to old debts. He swore he wouldn't pay. In July of last year, Ron Goldman's father, Fred Goldman, filed a creditor claim against the estate, not for the original $30+ million, but $117 million, including interest, and who knows what else. Still, no dice. But now, there is a complete 180. Late last week, the Simpson estate filed court documents agreeing to pay Fred Goldman almost $58 million, which it claims is a more accurate sum of principal plus 3 decades of interest. And still, the Goldmans aren't celebrating yet. They say, and I quote, "The executor's acceptance of the claim is a positive acknowledgement of the debt. However, it does not constitute payment. This acceptance simply allows the administration of the claim to move forward in probate. We will continue to monitor the probate process as it progresses." And that process is not going to be pretty because the numbers still don't add up. The executor estimates that O.J. left an estimated worth less than $500,000. He says he'll sell off O.J.'s possessions to bring in more money, but even so, the Goldmans aren't the only creditors in line. At the head of the line is none other than the IRS. Apparently, O.J. stiffed them too. So joining me now with his take on all of this is a legend of the criminal bar, host of the podcast Reasonable Doubt and Two Angry Men, Mark Geragos. Mark, thank you for coming on. It's good to see you once again.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Is the Goldman family ever actually going to see any of this money?
No, they're not. It reminds me, I have good friends who a lot of times go to trial against defendants who don't have a deep pocket, basically, that it's a trial to get to a verdict, get a huge verdict. And I always ask them, what is the point? And they say, well, it's great marketing. And okay, I got it. In this case, the agreement that the amount is $58 million, as the Goldman said and filed, it's really meaningless because there's nothing there. I mean, the IRS is going to take their share, and they're going to be first in line. And after they take their share with penalties and interest, there's going to be absolutely nothing left. So it's unfortunate because the Goldmans did get a verdict. I remember that case well. Dan Petruccelli was the one who tried it. That kind of vaulted Dan into his career with that verdict, but it's not collectible in the least.
Why the 180 then? I mean, it seems the executor was like, I'm not paying anything. And then, okay, we'll agree to the $58 million claim. Is that because they know there's nothing to pay out?
Yeah, I was going to say, can I preface this with wild speculation?
You can preface that definitely with wild speculation.
Okay, let me preface it with wild speculation. Because the money's run out and the executive probably thought to himself, why am I fighting this? There's nothing left to pay me, let alone them. What's the point?
Honestly, it makes sense to me. I can't say for sure. That seems like reasonable, wild speculation. I do have a question, though. What about the pension? What about selling off memorabilia? Is there more money somewhere? Is there more money they could look at? Or is this more a symbolic win? Is this saying this is an acknowledgement, the debt is going to be paid off, even if it's $1 coming from OJ to Goldman? That says something.
Well, I could think of some ways. I don't represent the Goldmans, have no connection to them, but I can think of a lot of ways that they could try to monetize this, and not the least of which is to maybe own the IP. There would be a bitter irony, however, that if they somehow got possession of the IP, that the person that they are promoting for the rest of time in death is the person who they believe ended up killing their loved one. But that is one way, and you can monetize people after their death, and a lot of times that's a way to do it. As far as the pension, that's a lot more complicated, and that has to do with who gets to inherit that, how does that run, and that's an NFL pension, and they've got rules that were collectively bargained for, which, by the way, is one of the reasons that he moved to Florida in the first place, because for the protection, the bankruptcy protection back there.
You raise a larger point that I want to get to, generally about collecting civil judgments, particularly with celebrity figures. I'll put that to the side for a second. The IP is really interesting. I wonder if that is something that could be negotiated. And look, usually we talk about IP with very memorable, very positive people. If it's Elvis, if it's Marilyn Monroe, right? I guess they could get it and just make sure his name, image, and likeness are always portrayed in the most negative fashion possible and make money off of that. I guess that's an aspect, yeah.
I mean, they could even make it if they wanted to license it, or if they were to negotiate the intellectual property and then license it out. They could restrict the ways that it's licensed and how they monetize the licensing for good, bad, or ugly. I mean, that's whoever's got lawful possession of the licensing in the name and likeness has that ability. It would not surprise me in the least at the end of the day, if there is no cash to write a check or a significant amount of cash to write a check, that they do that. And as far as the memorabilia, remember, that was one of the reasons, as you just said in the package that started this off, that got him, OJ had that claim of right defense that failed, but somebody was selling off his memorabilia. So there's an irony there as well.
How was he able to avoid this for so long? And it goes to a larger question. Right? Yes, he went to prison for some time. Maybe that delayed it in some way. But when you look at like the Epstein survivors, they were paid out quickly. How is it possible that if there's a judgment put in 1997, that all this time goes by and he was able to avoid it. I mean, again, I don't quite understand that, because people will look at this and say bad actors, a lot of times when they're ordered to pay a judgment, they figure out a way not to pay it. Alex Jones, another example. How was he able to avoid this, OJ, for so long?
If you're, first of all, if you're living, it's a lot, but I know it's counterintuitive, but if you're living, it's generally easier to protect assets. I mean, you mentioned Alex Jones, who goes through bankruptcy protection. There's another guy, forget his name, that's got a $900 million judgment against him. He's overseas. I've got judgments against guys right now who moved to Hong Kong for tens of millions of dollars. So there are ways when you are alive. Now, you mentioned Epstein. That's an interesting one. He had an estate that was over, if you believe what you read, $500 million. It's in the news today because they just released to Congress, or recently, by virtue of subpoena, the estate had the emails that are the subject of the Epstein controversy right now. But that estate is the one who then, which was very well funded, they entered into settlements with the victims in the case. So if you've got money, you can enter into settlements. If you don't have money, you've got to get more creative.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate aspect of the justice system in a way. I understand Goldman's going to receive an administration fee. What is that? How much is that? Is that typical in a case like this?
I don't know if it's typical, but it's typical that there is an administration fee. There is, whenever you probate a matter, there is normally a statutory, meaning by statute, percentage that the administrator gets. So my guess is that there was also a deal cut with the executor, going back to that, where the executor said, well, I will pay you off, but you release me from any claims and you can take the fee that I normally would get going forward. And you don't want the executor, who knows, maybe there was some legal saber rattling at the executor to say you were in cahoots with OJ when he was alive to avoid payment of the judgment. We're going to do a lot of discovery. You can do it the easy way or the hard way. Go hire a lawyer. There's no money in the estate to pay one. Otherwise, forfeit your executor fee. We'll take that administration fee and we'll give you a release and we won't come after you.
Yeah, that's the big part about this. I mean, it kind of ends fighting about it. It ends the litigation. What about the Browns? You know, we're hearing so much about the Goldmans. Is Nicole Brown's family going to see any money, a dollar, from any of this?
I haven't looked at the court file, but if they filed a claim, they certainly would have a right to participate if they had a valid judgment. Remember, because of the age of the judgment, one of the things that happens is you have to renew the judgment every number of years in most jurisdictions, and you have to get it domesticated for wherever the probate is. So a lot of that is legal mumbo jumbo for if you kept it alive and you waited him out, waited OJ out, then you have the possibility of participating. But if what is reported is true and there's less than $1 million, the professionals can eat that up in no time.
100%. You know, the estate, and you mentioned this too, they approved the government. They approved the Goldmans as creditors. What about OJ's kids? Are they out of luck? Do they not get a cent here, the family?
Well, it's interesting as to whether or not there was, while he was alive, a trust that was set up. I haven't looked at it, and by the way, I try to assiduously avoid the estates and that whole area of the law. Maybe not as much as family law, but it's got a close cousin. But they could have transferred assets during his life into a trust that would have gone to the kids, knowing that once OJ died, there was going to be a food fight for the payment of the judgments. So it would not shock me in the least that the kids have already been taken care of.
And real quick, if OJ didn't die, let's say he lived another 10, 20 years, you think he'd ever pay out 1 cent to the Goldmans or Nicole Brown's family? Or you think there would always be ways for him to make sure not to cover it up?
No, I mean, he's proven. I mean, if past his prologue, he's proven that, I mean, the first thing he did was move to Florida. They have more expansive laws in terms of their asset protection. Then he was in Nevada to claim his memorabilia back, but Nevada's got some favorable laws as well. But I think he was not moving for geography as much as he was asset protection.
Well, this is another chapter of the O.J. saga that we close on. Mark Geragos, thank you so much. Good seeing you.
Good seeing you, Jesse. Thank you.
All right. Now, before we go to break, we have this quick update that we want to tell you about on Anna Kepner, the 18-year-old cheerleader from Florida who died earlier this month on a Caribbean cruise with her family. So the Daily Mail is now reporting that Anna's body was found under a bed, wrapped in a blanket, and covered with life jackets. Now, there's no response yet from the FBI nor from Anna's family, but the medical examiner says that a full death report could take weeks. We're going to definitely follow this one. Now, still to come, still more outrage over Jesse Mack Butler's sweetheart deal for raping two girls. He may never spend one day in prison. And if you followed our coverage, you know that doesn't just sit well with just about anybody, except for Jesse Butler, of course. Now we know that the outrage extends to Butler's own family, and this is long before he pleaded no contest in court. Butler admitted everything in writing. You are going to see it all after the break. If Jesse Mack Butler were in an Oklahoma prison tonight, starting his 78-year sentence for raping and strangling two of his former girlfriends, I'll tell you right now, I doubt we'd ever talk about him or know his name. But we do know his name. We do know his miserable story, because Butler's not in prison. That 78-year sentence was magically, yet legally, reduced to community service, counseling, and a curfew, once Butler was legally reduced from an adult rapist and strangler to a youthful offender. And tonight we have some jaw-dropping updates. But first, let me remind you of the offenses that will be erased completely from Jesse Butler's record if he can just stay out of trouble until he's 19. He's 18 right now, by the way. One victim, identified only as LS, told police that Jesse raped her and attempted to rape her and choked her unconscious again and again. Her doctor told her in one attack she was 30 seconds away from death. She needed surgery to repair the damage from Jesse's hands squeezing on her throat. Another victim, Chaos, told investigators Jesse was violent from the start. She said she went along with sex because she didn't know what to do because she was terrified. And the time she finally said no, Jesse pinned her down and strangled her until she passed out. He even recorded himself doing it. And police later found that video on his phone. Now, Jesse Butler pleaded no contest to 11 felony counts. But tonight we know that months earlier, he reportedly confessed to pretty much everything in writing. A digital journalist named Justin Shepard, whose online handle is Just in the Nick of Crime, obtained a text that he says Butler sent to one of the girls that he brutalized. The text says, and I quote, "IK, I know, I ruined your life and I'm so sorry, but please, I'm begging you to convince her," another victim, "not to go to the principal, please. If you did love me at all, please, I could lose everything. Please, I'm scared. I know what I did to you was awful. Everything about me is, and I am so sorry for everything. Hopefully one day you can forgive me. From the bottom of my heart, I am sorry. Please say something." The girl did say something, all right. We've also got reporting that several members of Jesse Butler's own family also want him to pay for what he did. I want to bring on one of the best, Justin Shepard. He's been on this case from the very beginning. Justin, thank you so much for joining us again. What did you learn from Jesse's family member who called you? Let's start there.
So basically what I learned, I mean, there's really a lot that you could go into, but one of the things I learned is that some of these people, extended family members, are getting harassed. And, basically what they wanted to make clear was that, hey, we do not support, we do not condone what he did. They were shocked, as most of us are, that the punishment was so, or I'm using the word punishment, loosely, was so lenient. They expected there would be some accountability for this. They were shocked that there wasn't. And they wanted to make it very clear that, hey, we do not stand on this side. We're not standing on the side of this family. We do not condone what Jesse did, and we're just flat out as shocked as everybody else is.
Didn't the victim's family member who shared the text also share a story where Jesse's mother maybe ignored or didn't catch the screams from a room in her house? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so it's the victim or the survivor who had the text that was sent that text. The other survivor is the one who experienced something in the house. So what happened allegedly was that they were upstairs in a room, whether it was Jesse's bedroom or possibly a movie room in the house. There was the sound of struggling, saying no, screaming, wanting him to stop whatever he was doing, which I'm sure we can assume. Jesse's mom, Jackie, comes up, apparently knocks on the door, asks if everything is okay. Jesse only responds and says, yeah, everything is fine. And she turns around and walks away. She never opens the door. She never asks any follow-up questions. She just turns away and doesn't even wait for the girl to answer.
So I just want to be clear. Is there a split in the family where you have certain members of the family who are denying that he ever did this or saying, we didn't know this was happening, we defend him, we support him, versus others who are like, we need full accountability, this is not justice? The family, is there a split?
So when you talk about a split, I would say in his immediate family, when you're talking about his parents, Mack Butler, Jackie Butler, and his sister Shelby, all of those people are standing right beside him, basically supporting him in every way they can. My understanding is actually during one of the victim impact statements, Shelby, the sister, actually rolled her eyes and laughed at the victim during it. And then basically everybody who's not part of that immediate family, those, three people, everybody else, to my understanding, vehemently opposes and condemns everything that he did.
And we say he did because he did do this, and he pleads no contest. These messages, these text messages, are so damning that I just imagine what would happen if they were presented at a real trial. What was your reaction to those messages? In your opinion, was it consistent with what you're seeing? Did it change your perception of him in this case?
It didn't really change my perception of him. I'm actually not surprised at all because, where a lot of people might look at this, I don't think maybe a lot of people are, but a lot of people look at this and say, oh, well, he's, truly sorry, he's remorseful. That's not what this is. This is hey, the hammer's about to come down. You're about to be outed for everything that you've done to us. And he's begging for that not to happen. He's worried about his baseball career. He's worried about future college. He's worried about the family's reputation. That's what this says to me, that I'm sorry I got caught, not I'm sorry for what I did to you.
Now, I understand if we're talking about accountability, aside from Jesse Mack Butler, you've been hearing rumors about a grand jury maybe being convened here. About what and about who? So
my knowledge on this is a little bit more limited, but basically Oklahoma Representative Justin J.J. Humphrey has kind of been following corruption in Oklahoma outside of even just Stillwater. And this case is one that he really kind of has latched on to. My understanding is he's gone to the courthouse, pulled records, pulled donor lists for the judge, things like that, or judges. And what he's trying to do is basically you have to get enough signatures on a petition in order to be able to call a grand jury. And for those people, they have to be registered Payne County, Oklahoma voters. Now, anybody can volunteer to collect signatures. My understanding is there's 250 volunteers that are going to go around and collect signatures. And once they reach a certain threshold, and I don't know what that is, you'd have to ask him, then they're able to kind of present this and basically try to get a grand jury called on the judge, on the prosecutors, on the DA. Because what you see in Payne County, what he's uncovered, what I've even uncovered, and some of the things that we've talked about, is that Jesse's case is horrific, but it's a pattern. This is not a new situation where they've been easy on predators, where they've been easy on people who should have gotten things much harder, where there's retaliatory, sentences or punishments based on how that person is and the relationships they have. That's what's kind of been found overall. And so I think that Representative Humphreys really wants to kind of clean up Oklahoma and make people like this accountable so that this kind of thing doesn't continue to happen. Because what we've seen here in this case with Jesse Butler, with another case that we've talked about on the show before, Seth Swaim, is that you have young girls, underage girls, who basically this court system is saying your voice doesn't matter. And I think he wants to change that.
And the idea being because Jesse Mack Butler, his family had some important connections to the community and was getting sort of preferential treatment. What can we expect to happen? I believe there's this December 8th hearing. What do you know about that?
So I know that there was a hearing today. I'm not sure what that was in regard to, and there's another one on December 8th. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe that the December 8th one is going to basically be a check-in to kind of see how he's been doing with his terms of the plea agreement. And if he's been holding true to those, then they could possibly move to basically, discontinue everything else. And, once he turns 19, it all gets expunged. If they find that he's not been adhering to his end of that agreement, then he could be put in prison. That plea could be revoked, but I don't really see that happening.
Justin, we have about 20 seconds, 30 seconds. How are the survivors doing?
These girls are really strong, and I'll say this about them and what I've heard. They are thrilled that the world has been watching this, that even though Jesse wasn't held accountable in a court of law, he is being held accountable in the court of public opinion. This story has made it across the country. I've had people say that, hey, this has been trending on African platforms. This is trending in Norway. This is trending in the UK. So he's not just in Oklahoma now. His family's reputation, it is everywhere. And we're going to continue to do that as more information comes out to make sure that he's held accountable and other people like him are held accountable.
And you have been shedding the light on it. You've been doing great work. Justin Shepard, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, straight ahead. It is the people versus the Golden State Killer. Also, the East Area Rapist, the Visalia Ransacker, the original Night Stalker. They're all the same guy. Joseph DeAngelo, who was caught, convicted, and put away after literally decades of police work, details of which are coming out only now. The lead prosecutor in the Golden State Killer's takedown is going to join me live when we come back. It happens all the time now, but the technique known as investigative genetic genealogy, it cracked its first case really in 2018, and what a case it was. You know what I'm talking about. Crime scene DNA led investigators to the family tree that spawned one Joseph DeAngelo, the Golden State Killer, who, by the way, was an unlikely suspect, former cop, married with kids. But over a 12-year period, decades earlier, from 1974 to 1986, DeAngelo murdered at least 13 people and raped as many as 50 more. His specialty was psychological torture. He would stack dishes on the backs of some of his male victims and then threaten to kill the whole family if he heard the dishes move. But then you go to 2020. Pleaded guilty to multiple counts of murder with special circumstances, multiple counts of kidnapping, and he received multiple life sentences, which, by the way, he's still serving tonight at age 80. Tin Ho was Joseph DeAngelo's prosecutor, is now the district attorney of Sacramento County. His inside account of the case of a lifetime has just been released. It's called The People vs. the Golden State Killer. And Tin Ho joins me now live. Thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. I have to start with this. I was wondering, what would we learn new? What would be different? Talk to us about the interrogations, because that's something that hasn't been publicly discussed yet. What happened during those interrogations with DeAngelo? What are we learning?
So first and foremost, we had the body snatchers go and grab him. And once they grabbed him, to put him in an interrogation room. And the key was they let him sit there for 2 hours, stewing his juices, wondering what they knew, what we knew, what evidence we had against him. And then we confronted him with the crimes they committed in Sacramento and Ventura. At first, he denied remembering anything, but when left alone in the room, he started mumbling to himself, and he tried to set up a mental defense of a split personality, that this alternative personality named Jerry made him commit all these crimes. He didn't want to do it, but after years, he was able to push Jerry out. That was what he was trying to set up, but he is the master malingerer.
Why did you not believe it? Why was it malingering? Why was it fake?
Because he had done this before. In 1979, when he was a police officer, he was arrested for shoplifting a hammer and dogwood plant. And when the security guards tried to grab a hold of him, he fought back. He started babbling and saying crazy stuff. And when the sheriff's department got there, he admitted to the police, hey, I was just pretending to be crazy so that they wouldn't call you. So he has a history of being a manipulator, of being a malingerer. And this was just part of that as well.
Did the fact that he was a member of law enforcement, did that help him evade capture? How did that complicate the case?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it for a second, he committed crimes in 11 different counties over a 12-year time span and was able to escape capture. That's because he knew how long it would take the police to arrive on scene. He knew where the ingress and egress locations would be. He knew their tactics. And so that helped him avoid capture. And even when the ransacking series, he was on the task force to find the ransacker. And he was, in fact, the ransacker himself.
The original Night Stalker, the East Area Rapist, the Golden State Killer. He has all these nicknames. Was that did that affect the investigation as well? Did that complicate it? Did that make it tough to pinpoint one person?
Absolutely, because if you think about it, back in the 70s and the 80s, Sacramento wasn't talking to Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara wasn't talking to Orange County. All the different police agencies were siloed. In this day and age, you couldn't commit this crime and get away with it for as long as he did, because we have cell phones, we have Ring cameras, we have surveillance, we have forensic DNA. And so he was able to evade capture because everybody was siloed. Nobody was communicating with each other, and he was a cop.
I have a lot more to ask you about him, but look, I gotta ask about the headlines, because if we talk about how was he ID'd, his manhood is described as, quote, smaller than the circumference of a dime, and its length is equal to the tip of your pinky. How notable was that in IDing him? Explain that to us.
Well, first of all, a number of the rape victims in Sacramento and Northern California described him having an extremely small penis. And so when you look at it, we didn't have any DNA evidence left in Northern California except for Contra Costa. So we needed circumstantial evidence to identify him. So when he was arrested, when he was captured, I obtained a search warrant to go ahead and have photographs taken of his genitalia. And at one point inside the lineup room, the detective threw his hands up in the air and says, "We can't find it. It's nowhere to be found." And so they kept looking. They had to pull back his stomach. They had to keep looking. And eventually they did find his penis and take pictures of it. And if you think about it, why did he commit these crimes? Part of it is because he felt very powerless in his own life, physically, mentally, and emotionally. He witnessed his sister being raped while he was held down as a child. His genitalia, the fact that he was beaten by his parents. At the end of the day, this was a form of him to re-exert control and power over other people. He had a God complex, which compelled him to commit these crimes, but they were his choices nonetheless.
And to be clear, that matched the description that people had given in the past, right?
Yes, it did. It matched several of the descriptions that multiple victims described of their assailant.
Yeah, you talk about what's going on in his mind. You talk about manipulation. I think a lot of us wondered when he's wheeled into the courtroom. It's such like a famous image, right? He's so frail, he's so disheveled. It's like, this is the guy, this is the Golden State Killer. Is that an act?
100% it's an act, because here's the deal. When he was first arrested, he was put in a booking cell. He put his head down and he rammed it against the wall. So when you look at his booking photo, he's got red on the top of his head. It's blood. Yeah. So when they put him in a cell, we had to put a camera in there to make sure he didn't hurt himself. I have video of him walking into a cell with a cane, just like out of the movie The Usual Suspects. He's hobbling. The moment he enters the cell, he drops the cane, he's doing jumping jacks, he's walking around, he's climbing up and down. He is the master manipulator. And he was doing that again and again because that was his only way of exerting some form of control in the courtroom where he had none.
Yeah, he had that this kind of face going on. It felt very forced. Do you know how he's doing in prison right now? If he's having health troubles, how he's doing at age 80?
Well, he is currently in the protective needs unit, which includes other rapists, child molesters, gang members, and snitches. He currently works in the cafeteria, but what I can tell you is that he is constantly looking over his shoulder. He's afraid that he's going to get beaten or attacked. He's living in his own version of hell where he belongs and where he deserves to be.
Any statement from him? Do you know what is he saying anything? Does he want to talk? Anything like that?
He's not taking any visitors. He's not making any statements. And that's really his way of trying to exert some form of control when he has none in prison.
Why did you want to write this? Why did you want to provide more details? And I think it's a good thing, right? Because unfortunately, the news cycle happens very often. We have so many different crime stories every day. But this is one that was notable for a lot of reasons, and I think it changed. It changed how crimes are solved. This idea of cold cases may no longer be a thing. It may be a thing of the past. I mean, it was pretty remarkable when he was arrested. Why did you write this? What are you hoping people gain from this, and what are you hoping people learn about what he did in this investigation?
So Michelle McNamara wrote I'll Be Gone in the Dark. She focuses on the criminal and the crimes. And unfortunately, she died before he was caught. Paul Holes wrote about the technique of investigative genealogy, which we use to solve the crime. But my book is the third in the trilogy. It covers the investigation and the prosecution of this case. But more than that, it turns the attention on the generation of law enforcement officers that never gave up the pursuit of justice. And it also talks about the stories of 4 to 5 victims in terms of their author.
Oh, all right. Tinho, we just lost
stories in terms of what happened to them before, during, and afterward.
Yeah, your Zoom I got a little choppy there, but we got it at the end. I just want to say, while we have you before it disconnects, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for writing the book, and really thank you for the great work that you do and have done. This is a monster who deserves to spend the rest of his life in prison. So, Tinho, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we have to take another break, but then, okay, 3 men with rifles shoot another man to death in front of witnesses, and a spot opens up on death row in South Carolina. Execution by firing squad is still pretty rare, but Stephen Bryant chose it over lethal injection or the electric chair. And when you hear what he did to get there, you might think that he got off easy. That story's next. For only the 6th time in modern U.S. history, a condemned man has been executed by firing squad. Stephen Corey Bryant was a triple murderer in South Carolina, which is leading a firing squad comeback. Bryant was the 3rd prisoner to die that way in the state in this year. Like the others, he chose death by rifle over lethal injection or electrocution. And when the time came last Friday, he made no final statement. His murders speak for him. In a week-long spree back in 2004, Bryant killed a coworker for no apparent reason and then burglarized his home. 2 days later, he killed a man in his 60s and left notes for police in the victim's blood. One said, "Catch me if you can." The killer answered the victim's phone before he fled, informed the man's wife and daughter that he was dead. And 2 days after that, Bryant offered a ride to a stranger that he met at a convenience store and then shot him in the back. More than 20 years later, 3 of the victim's family members witnessed Bryant's own death after a final meal of stir fry, egg rolls, stuffed shrimp, 2 candy bars, and German chocolate cake. 3 prison employees did the shooting, and just under 2 minutes after that hood was placed over Stephen Bryant's head, justice was officially served. Still ahead tonight, a famous TikToker flaunts her affair with a married man to 3 million followers, only to learn a very expensive lesson in North Carolina law. Don't go anywhere, we'll talk about it. And we leave you tonight with the high price of home wrecking, especially if you live in North Carolina or the 5 other states that still allow jilted spouses to sue. I'll tell you what, I covered this on my Sidebar podcast. I haven't thought of this. This is a real law. This is a real way you can sue. I haven't thought about this since law school. And then this story comes. Last week, a court in Durham ordered an online influencer, you may know her, named Brene Kennard, to pay almost, get this, $2 million to her husband's former wife, a woman named Akira Montague. Now, Montague had accused Kennard of flaunting her affair with Tim Montague, okay, and the Montagues' eventual breakup in front of 3 million followers on TikTok and Instagram. cheating's bad, affairs are bad, but when you're talking about social media and you're talking about potential damages and the harm that was caused, now you're starting to see how things add up. Okay, so Kennard was actually married to someone else too, by the way. It was Tim Montague's cousin, so think about that. It's not even like a love triangle, it's more like a love square. It's probably the way to put it. Or anyway, in most states, strictly a matter for divorce court, you would think. North Carolina, different. It still recognizes the concepts of criminal conversation, which is not what it sounds like, and alienation of affection, which is what it sounds like. So criminal conversation is having sex with another person's spouse. You can sue for this. Now, Kennard represented herself in the 6-day trial, found it a little more challenging than maybe her Life of Brene videos, which you see right there. I'm told, and the reporting indicates that when she actually questioned Montague on the stand, fireworks between the two of them. There is no love lost between the two of them. Now, she claimed that Akira knew about the affair, even approved of it. She also claimed that much of the evidence against her from social media was illegally obtained. Problem for her, even though she has a massive following, the jury did not side with her. They did not buy it, and the judge awarded Akira $1.5 million for alienation and another $250,000 for conversation. I guess the moral of the story is, when you think about it, content may be king, dirty laundry is dirty laundry, and often very expensive. Now, before we go, programming note, we have the attorney of OJ's estate, Malcolm Laverne, continuing today's conversation. We're going to ask why the change of heart. And then we have the former Murdaugh family housekeeper who just wrote a book about her experience. That's going to be on tomorrow. That's our show tonight. Cuomo's next.